Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldron. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is November 27th, Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. Just checking to make sure I knew what the actual date was. And luckily, I have that on my computer, because otherwise I would have no idea. I don't have any idea about anything. If I lose the computer, I'm finished. So I guess you know how to disrupt everything now. And, well, if you want the show off the air, all you have to do is come by and destroy all the equipment, although that was always true. I don't know whether I've informed anybody of anything. I suppose, this laptop in particular, I guess, is what saves my bacon, as it were, with the time and date each day. All right, it tells me it's time for us to begin another one of these programs, and there's plenty to catch up on. It is Tuesday, and we are, at least formally, without accompaniment today. No Greg Dworkin until tomorrow, and he'll be joined by Joan McCarter. And who knows what the day will bring us, but we have a lot of stories, of course, to catch up on. Hard to know which direction the show will go, as always. I try not to plan these things, not because I love the spontaneity, but because I hate doing the work. Is that enough for you? Okay. We have a lot of stories to get to and a lot of catching up to do. We're still writing about and reading about the speakership contest, though it is mostly settled at this point. I think where we stand now is that there are 15 remaining signatories who have not disavowed their signature on the letter purporting to state for these folks that they will refuse to vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker on the floor of the House. If the number remains at 15 or less, there's really no danger. Actually, if it remains at 16 or less, I think at this point, it sounds like, all of the news outlets, I guess, are now saying that all of the races are called. Now, whether that means anything, since they've uncalled so many of the races, I don't know. And there's still counting going on, and so still a possibility that things will change. But it looks like it's settling down. It looks like California 21 might flip after all. That puts the House, I think, in the neighborhood of about 235 Democrats and 200 Republicans, not including our non-voting members. And we may see that change in the next Congress, with Democrats setting the rules. They tend to like to include in their rules packages floor voting privileges for delegates and the resident commissioner of Puerto Rico, etc. At least, and this is one of those annoying things where you have to know the technicalities. The way they usually handle that is to allow those members to vote in the committee of the whole. Now, that sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? And it's WHOLE. If you really wanted to get serious about truth in advertising, committee of the whole might be an HOLE thing. But do I spend time on something like this? I guess so. I've dived into it and now I'm stuck with it. It's not the same thing as the House of Representatives, but every member of the House of Representatives is a member of the Committee of the Whole. It's the Committee of the Whole House. In fact, it's called the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, which is sort of an interesting footnote, I guess. You could carry that around with you and impress people at parties. I say leave that party immediately, but if it works. But essentially, it's a legislative fiction that allows the House to, again, we'll use some jargon, resolve itself into a committee. Essentially, they just pretend that they're a committee when they're doing their business, because the standing rules of the House typically are that, the standing rules of the House have some rules about how long anything can be discussed or debated. And, generally speaking, limits all debate on any matter to an hour and limits the length that members can speak during that hour. And it's inconvenient. And they almost always work around it in one way or another, usually by adopting, as we know, special rules for the govern a debate of any particular issue or bill or whatever, and they just say, all right, we're going to debate this thing for 2 hours. And the time will be equally divided, et cetera, et cetera. In the absence of something like that, any bill would be debated for an hour. There would be a 5-minute rule limiting members to speaking for 5 minutes or less, et cetera, et cetera. And just gets in the way. So they work around it with the special rules. And one of the other legislative fictions, like special rules are kind of a legislative fiction too, is that they resolve themselves into the committee of the whole House on the State of the Union to do that business so that they can be more flexible. And the committee can have different rules than the House, et cetera, et cetera. And so they usually debate the bills as the committee of the whole, and they amend bills as the committee of the whole. And then they tend to then report the bill out favorably to the whole House as if they were really a committee, even though it's a committee with everybody in it and it's taking place on the House floor. Then they adjourn the committee of the whole and resolve themselves as the actual House of Representatives to vote on final passage of the bill as reported out from the committee of the whole. It's stupid, but it works. Or rather, I should say it sounds stupid, but it works. And so what you typically see is Democrats allow for the members representing the territories to vote in the committee of the whole, but not in the whole, in the actual House of Representatives on final passage for some reason. And I guess that would be constitutional. And I guess they're under the impression that it would take a constitutional amendment, and I suppose it would, just thinking about it offhand, to allow them to vote in the House of Representatives because they don't represent the state. And that includes, by the way, the delegate from the District of Columbia, who has to suffer that indignity as well. But then again, the entire population of the district has to suffer that indignity all the time, every day. So that's where we are. So we may see them being able to do that. So if you're ever in, as I was, the trivia contest, the chairman's pub trivia contest at Netroots Nation, where Adam Bonin, who was then chairman, and I guess they go by a different name now, asked the question or he was doing a math problem. We were supposed to, add, subtract these numbers, blah, 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 and they were all, of course, politically connected. One of the factors in the equation was the total number of members of the House of Representatives. And, of course, I had to ask aloud whether he was referring to the House of Representatives as constitutionally constituted, or was he talking about the House sitting as the committee of the whole? Because it mattered for the numbers. And I think he gave me the finger. That's how they resolved that one. So I assumed he was talking about the total number of actual representatives, which is 435, which is where we began with this. 235 of whom, it looks like, in the 116th Congress, the one upcoming in January, will be Democrats, and 200 of which are Republicans. And as you may recall from our discussions of how a speaker gets elected, the speaker has to get a majority of the votes of the House. That is to say, with 435 members, 218 members have to affirmatively vote for a winning candidate for speaker. If there are 16 holdouts, and I understand we're down to 15 signatories, if there was another one out there somewhere, you would have 400. Let's just do the math. You'd have 235 Democrats. If you lost 16 of them, and the rest voted for Nancy Pelosi or abstained, You could get still 200. Well, I guess if nobody abstained or voted present, you would still have 219 votes for Nancy Pelosi. If you have 235 seats and you lose 17 people, that's still 218 votes for Nancy Pelosi and enough for her to win the speakership. If you have 235 people, in other words, then you would need to lose 18 Democrats would have to vote affirmatively for some person other than Nancy Pelosi, not necessarily Kevin McCarthy, in order to send things to a second ballot. So what I saw tweeted this morning that there are 15 holdouts and people continue to yell at them. That may be around the final number unless someone surprises us by, and it could still happen. You don't have to sign the letter in order to show up and vote against Nancy Pelosi if you want, for whatever reason, on the floor. But if the 15 remaining holdouts do it, then fine. So, she'll have fewer votes and then still be speaker. So I just thought I'd bring you up to date on that one. Lots of people writing about the end game here, and let's discuss that for just a little bit. Armando offering to chime in with some commentary. If it's about the Pelosi thing, or you want to make it about the Pelosi thing, absolutely, you can go ahead and chime in. If not, hang on a second, and we'll just dispense with what's going on and the articles about it. Let's see. I have, okay, so we'll be ready for you. So if you want to wait a sec and listen to the lead-in, that's fine. Otherwise, no. Okay, just chime in. Hey, Armando, how you doing?
Finish your statement,
okay.
And then I have questions.
Okay. Well, I've got a bunch of articles, and I don't know that I necessarily read them all. We'll start with this one from yesterday. Robert Costa, I guess, has moved.
Before you get to the articles, then I got to ask you my question.
Okay.
Because I read Costa's article, and they all seem stupid to me.
Okay. Well, I've got Costa, and I guess they moved him from the Republican beat to the Democratic beat because that's the majority now.
It's
also,
a weird
there's nothing
thing
else
for him.
going on.
I mean, he was covering the Trump. Anyway, that's
and
a
he was
story.
great at doing it because he was sort of undercover and whatnot, and they talked to him for whatever. I have no idea why the people who talked to Robert Costa
were
the
crazy.
last 2 years.
He would tell the truth. I mean, I guess he would just nod and treat them respectfully as if what they were saying made sense, and then he'd print it.
Yeah, and then they were
and
furious.
Say, what the heck?
Then they'd get
but
killed.
Anyway.
Democratic.
Here's my first question.
Oh,
Maybe you
all
already
right.
answered it and I missed it.
Well, let's see. Go
Where
ahead.
does it say in the Constitution
Right over here. Oh, we get it.
that the Speaker of the House has to win a majority of the voting members to be the Speaker?
It doesn't. In the Constitution, what it says is that the House shall choose, and like Trump, they capitalized choose and they spelled it funny. And the assumption is, well, if the House chooses it, then that clearly would be by majority vote, which is an amazing argument, by the way, against the filibuster and its constitutionality. But okay.
Yeah, stop.
All right.
Where does it mean that? What if I said, no, that's not what it means?
You could do that. House. Well, I don't know what. I'd have to look in the House rules to see what the rules say, but rules and precedents are such that.
All right, I don't care about your precedents.
Okay, well, yeah, you got to find.
You know what I'm
who
saying?
doesn't.
I mean,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that were supposed to be, and
yeah, I know we've brought up once or twice on the show in the past, at least one time, the House decided, to hell with it. We're gonna just pick the plurality winner after several ballots. They couldn't decide anything. It was annoying all of them, and I guess they got together at some point and said, well, we don't like you and you don't like us, but it's not. What was probably going on was an intra-party fight like this one.
Obviously, it would be intra-party.
And the minority said, to hell with it. We're never going to win, so keep your plurality speaker. And they just did.
I mean, in a parliamentary system, you make coalitions, and I guess, though I'm not sure how that even works. Actually, I'm talking out my you-know-what, because I don't know how parliaments form necessarily.
I guess
presumably they need a majority because they have to form a government, but this, there's no rule that I know of unless they just made it up and said, well, we got to have the majority. And you just told me historically there was one time they just said, plurality. Okay, 37 ballots is enough.
Yeah,
we're taking the plurality.
It was a long time ago. I don't know how it works. Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of things are just precedents, or this is the way we've always done it. Just like changing the filibuster rule through the nuclear option or anything like it. Well, we usually don't do things this way, but we just did.
I've got a new problem solver caucus proposal.
By the way,
eliminate the majority of voting member rule for picking the speaker.
Eliminate what?
Eliminate this rule.
Oh, the majority rule. Oh, all right.
We won't have these stupid fights anymore. See, the problem solved.
Right, and also get rid of the debt ceiling. That we want to do that one. Although that's not a house rule.
That's in a law.
I just want to say we should get rid of it. You like to say we should just get rid of it.
I do, but you have to repeal the law to do it.
Whatever. Yes,
but
true.
The
obviously.
Debt ceiling, of course, they passed. It's the most ridiculous law because you keep moving it up every time.
Yes.
So what's the point?
Well,
by the way, whatever happened to our debt ceiling? We must be up against it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't keep that clock, but it's about that time. I mean,
I know December 7th is a day for some reason.
Pearl
Harbor Day, obviously, but
right.
I think there's a funding issue. Joan will tell us tomorrow.
Yes, true. And so she'll give us the deadline on that. It could be changed, I guess. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and read the House rules and precedents on why they decided that it needed to be a majority. It was just, I think it made sense at the time, and it really hasn't gotten in the way of anything in about 100 years.
What happens if Nancy Pelosi just says, there is no majority rule. This is a new Congress, and there is no rules, and I'm the speaker?
Well, if she says it, I don't know. I don't know if anything happens.
I mean, obviously she's not going to say it because she doesn't need to say it.
Right. But you'd have to take this apart. The officer that, some people have this question. Okay, so before you elect the speaker, who runs the meetings of the House? And there are not very many of them.
There was a House.
Yes.
It was good? No.
Right. It's the clerk of the House runs the first meeting. And here's the thing.
Who elected him?
Yeah, well, her at the moment, but usually they are elected or they're affirmed in their role by the House. Of course, each time they resolve themselves. The one that this is weird. This is an interesting thing because in order to do it, you have to have a clerk from the previous Congress, which is a thing that doesn't really work with the House because the entire House dissolves at the end, and you're not really allowed to carry it forward. But the clerk stays in office. But the clerk's not elected through federal election. They're elected by the previous House, and they carry over to the next Congress, and they, formally convene the new Congress. Then the first thing the new Congress does is elect the speaker, and then from there, the speaker takes over. But I don't know what you would do if you needed to make a rules change regarding the election of the speaker before the new speaker was installed, and which clerk, who will be the clerk? I guess the clerk from the Republicans' time and the majority carries over, and then I guess offers up her resignation and is either replaced or not at the call of the speaker. Basically, the speaker will make a nomination for that.
You see the problem there.
Yeah,
right. There's no juridical reason why somebody who was a clerk of the previous Congress has any say over who the new speaker is.
It's so,
They should pass a law if they really want to be formally correct.
Yes.
I mean,
well,
if we're all going to be textualists instead of touchy-feely emanations and permutations. Because arguably, I could say the House chose to do it this way. But which House?
Yes. And the old one, the new one. Well, a lot of the really original parliamentary rules on this are just, ironically enough, borrowed from the English Parliament.
Of course.
And because it was the only one we knew about. Although there were other parliaments, we just only cared about the one because we were a colony.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's essentially where it comes from, and all of the rules commentary ultimately goes back to that.
It just brings to mind what you always tell me. I need to see Trump sign it. How do I know that's real?
Right. Well, I guess
Who
that's
is this
true.
clerk? Who made her the clerk?
Yeah.
How come she's still the clerk?
And we don't learn that stuff. I mean, this is actually an important mini lesson here. We don't bother with that. We don't learn it. We don't pay attention to it because it's not challenged. It's followed because everybody knows, look, that's the only way we'll have any legitimacy in our governance. And then when you get somebody who's like, screw everything, that's when you really run into problems.
The problem solvers are actually causing, to me, a problem.
Well, here they certainly are. But, I mean, I don't know what else they caused. Does anybody have a list of the problems solved by the problem solvers?
Nothing.
Do they have a list? I mean, so I asked somebody that, and they said, well, I'm sure they have a list. And I was like, I don't know where you'd find it. And if they don't have a list, that's a problem in itself. You should solve that one right there.
You can look on their website. They have a lot of problems, like in quotes, that they want to solve.
Yeah, any of them done?
They've never solved the problem in their lives.
I mean, because we got a lot of problems. Tear gassing children. I'm waiting for them to solve that problem.
The problem the problem we have in the White House is the biggest problem we have, and that's why to decide this is the time to do this.
Yeah, well, it isn't, and they can't.
Irresponsible to the degree that you should never call yourself a problem solver. This isn't the time for this.
Well, no, it's not, and the only way that they could have done what they wanted to do would be to cause a gigantic problem, and then say, I'll solve it by uncausing it.
Yeah.
Later on. So, I mean it's problem causers. That's difficult to say. Problem causer caucus.
And that's maybe as John Lewis says, they're causing good trouble, but they're not. This isn't good trouble. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. I just wanted to just lay out what I thought, because I looked at the Constitution too, and I was like, huh?
Yeah, it just says shall choose. And maybe CHUSE means majority. It doesn't, but that's an assumption. That's just a basic, that's the basic rule of voting on things, majority rules.
That's the clause that lets everybody say anybody could be speaker, which I guess is true.
Right. That's true. It doesn't say necessarily that anybody can. It just says you choose. And, they don't usually choose anybody else. They just don't.
I don't think they ever have in history, have they?
No.
So, and it doesn't particularly make sense to not choose a House member to be, because you're choosing from amongst members of the House. Makes perfect sense.
And you're giving away an enormous amount of power, and you don't give it away to somebody who's not one of you. I mean, that's the basic. That's why we have racism in this country.
That's right. But at any rate, I just wanted to underline that there's nothing written down that requires any of this.
Not in the Constitution.
No. I guess in somebody's standing rules is what you're saying, but those standing rules were from a previous Congress that no longer exists.
Right, that's true too.
They give it a new number every 2 years.
And there's no debate about that in the House. They try to pretend in the Senate like it's a continuing body, but it doesn't work very well. But in the House, they make no such pretense. So, yeah, there's room for it. There's no need for doing it, and so she won't, like you said. But I guess, and of course, nobody wants to come in to that sort of controversy. Even if you do it to defeat the problem solvers caucus, then you've created a new problem for yourself.
I agree. And this will all work out.
Yeah. They no longer have the numbers.
Someday it might not, and we'll have a House without a speaker.
Could be.
Case, I don't know what you do. But
well, it's actually quite difficult. But, yesterday Robert Costa's reporting was essentially that the end game is now, we're now in that portion where the rebels, as they were calling them, which is kind of dumb. I'm sure they enjoyed that label, even though they're from no labels. They're now entering into, they're doing what the other people did earlier. They're trying to negotiate their surrender. They'll now vote for Nancy Pelosi, but only if their demands are met. But if they're down to 15, there aren't any demands that need meeting.
Well, there's two different groups. I mean, let's be clear. There's some overlap, but they're two different groups. The 15 was that kooky letter, and we already have people who signed the letter who are already off the letter.
Mm-hmm.
Two people in particular that Costa mentions Higgins, of course, not only is now for Pelosi, he even says that it's crazy for Pelosi to agree to a set term. That is, that she would not run again in 2 years.
All right.
So it's really 13, and it's not even.
Well, I think
13.
it went from
you know
15 to 17 to 15.
I could pull out 100 letters that people signed saying they'd never vote for something.
Yeah. Well, that happens.
And they all
a
vote
lot.
for it.
That's true. That was the news yesterday. I guess today's reporting is largely similar, but I guess there's supposed to be some more detail about what they were asking for.
Well, Costa's big scoop was Gil Cisneros, who just won a race in California, joined the letter.
Okay.
That's a good timing there, Gil. I mean, the fight's almost over, and now you're going to go pick the losing side. I have to be honest, I don't know a thing about Gil Cisneros other than he won the lottery.
Okay.
And good for him. But,
sure.
My God, your political instincts strike me as stupid. You're going to probably going to break your promise that you didn't have to make. He was vague during the election.
Oh.
And then he decided to firm it up after, when the people he's joining are basically in full retreat and asking for meetings.
Well, who knows? I guess I hate to break the news to people also, but sometimes members, particularly new members, they usually avoid this stuff, but sometimes members don't know what they're joining. They really don't. And they will join 2 and 3 contradictory caucuses, and they have no idea.
I'll give you my favorite is Darren Soto.
Okay.
You're on a break. I'll tell you about Darren Soto on the flip.
All right. Well, we'll save him for the other side then. But there are I think we sort of alluded to it yesterday. There are people who will join the Progressive Caucus, though they're not progressives, and they'll join both. They'll join the New Democrats and the Progressive Caucus because they'll tell one group at home they're progressive, and they'll tell another group I'm a New Democrat. It doesn't matter to them. They don't realize that there's a contradiction. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. All right, we are back, and welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm Googling furiously to try and find out what exactly, I guess we might as well take a look at it and critique it. What are the Problem Solvers Caucus demands?
Fox has an explainer if you want.
Oh, okay.
November 26th.
Is that House Speaker's race, Nancy Pelosi's Problem Solvers Caucus Problem Explained?
That's the one.
Okay,
so
Ellen Nelson.
They'll explain what the demands are.
Okay, so as I understand it, they had their current demands are for some rules changes. And as you know, once again, as the new Congress gets together, the majority party will put together a rules change package. And the way they do it is they basically say, take all the rules from last time, which are no longer effective, but just incorporate them by reference, and then make the following changes. So they're really just voting on rules changes, substantively speaking. So each time, every 2 years,
here's from the
new
Vox
House
article
puts it together.
If you want to read it down towards the bottom, it says the 3 proposals they want Pelosi to back include a rule for expedited markup of bills that get at least 290 co-sponsors, a second rule that any amendment with at least 20 co-sponsors from both parties will get a floor debate and vote, and a third rule that every House member in a new session of Congress can introduce a bill in their own committee that would get a debate and committee vote as long as it is bipartisan. As long as it is bipartisan. What is this bipartisan nonsense? How's that an institutional argument?
I guess the problem solvers, I think, fancy themselves as a bipartisan caucus. So I guess they feel like they have to do that. And I think, I don't remember who it was that finally documented the thing, but if you never heard of the problem solvers, no one could blame you. They don't do anything. What they are, apparently, is the caucus, the internal House caucus manifestation of no labels, which is, we're bipartisan. We have Joe Lieberman and some unknown Republican guy, and we don't do anything.
Okay, whatever the merits of it, and I think it's completely meritless, but assume you think it's the best idea of all time. You don't put that in institutional rules. Institutions have neutral rules for the consideration of things, in theory, right?
Yes, they should. We have rules like this. They're not good ones. And you see it occasionally in the Senate. Sometimes it's just a temporary thing where the parties agree that, when they were trying to hash out filibuster reform, at one point there was what they were calling the gentleman's agreement that for the duration of the 100 and I don't remember which Congress, if X number of members from both parties backed a bill, it could be brought to the floor protected from the filibuster. But it was a large number, and it never worked because, of course, we were in one of the most divided Congresses ever, and nobody would work with the other side for fear of getting, pelted with garbage. So this is, taking a look at these particular demands.
If you want to put numerical thresholds, put numerical thresholds. If you want it to be 40, it's 40. The bipartisan part of it is nonsense. There's nothing that should be institutionally elevated about bipartisanship.
You could absolutely object to that on that basis. Yeah.
That you should have the rules, and if your bipartisanship can achieve the thresholds required by neutral rules, then you get what you get.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be anything. If I can get every Democrat to vote for something.
Right.
And that's 3 times the vote of your little 2020. How can you say that they deserve the same consideration? I've got 3 times the support you do. Every member is equal, whatever party they are. Of course, they're not all equal because someone becomes a speaker and someone runs a committee, and et cetera, et cetera. But at the beginning, at the formation stage, the reality is you have as much chance to run for speaker as anybody else. That's actually my fundamental problem with all these hostage situations. You want to tell the speaker what to do? Run for speaker.
Well, yeah. It's hard to do.
Yeah. Oh, I can't win though. Well, yeah. I guess that pretty much tells me
about
that what you're saying isn't that meritorious to your body.
Yeah, and there you could have a very long argument about that. Now, well, no, everybody knows that the speakership is really, not necessarily a popularity contest, but it's all about big money, and you've given out money to other members, and they support you for that reason. Well, that's the currency of politicians.
That's an argument for public financing of political campaigns. Where's the currency your bill on that, problem solvers, Cox?
It's currency. Yeah, right. Well, they don't have any proposal, as far as I know, about that one. I guess you could object also to you know what? Here's the way to diffuse it. I don't know if it'll have any impact at all, right? Here's where Bernie Sanders can step in and say, I don't like all this stupid talk about bipartisanship. We make a tremendous mistake in this country that saying something is bipartisan, we've been conditioned to believe that, that means it's fair because both sides like it. Well, not everybody is on one of the two sides. I'm not.
Great. Perfect. Great. I wish he would say that.
Yeah, and he could say that way and say, where do I count? You count me because I caucus with Democrats? That would be, that's a workaround. But basically the idea that you can only, or you get a expedited path to making laws and policies in this country if you get members of the 2 big parties to sign on.
The 2 big corrupt.
Yeah, the 2
parties.
big, yeah, right, exactly. And so here you can actually use that rhetoric and say, why would we build something like that into the system? It just so happens that we keep settling on 2 parties, but suppose we come to a point in history once again, like we did with the Republican Party, like they came out of nowhere, I mean, imagine having this rule when at the emergence of the Republican Party. Well, we want to get rid of slavery. Everybody knows that's a great thing from our modern perspective, and thankfully lots of people knew it was a terrible thing even then, right? And I don't know, we can't do it. There's not 20 Whigs who are willing to sign on. Well, but so what? There's 20 Republicans. It's not one of the two parties. So, I mean, you need Whigs. Sorry. What do you mean? I'm a full-fledged member of the House of Representatives. Yeah, you are, but you're not from one of the two parties.
Yeah, I got even better. How do you do this? Suppose I ran, and just for the hell of it, just to get it, I'm a Democrat. I got 20 of them. And we say, you know what, today I'm a Republican today. Here's our bipartisan bill that deserves expedited process.
That would be interesting. Wow.
What happens? I'm joining their caucus. You can't join our caucus. I'm joining your caucus.
That's a good question. I mean, why not? Suppose you got that. You got 20 Democrats, but you only have 19 Republicans. We got to hold out. And McCarthy leans on the rest of the Republicans. You can't join because if you do, they get an expedited path to consideration on the floor, and they have enough votes to pass it, right? And so somebody says, I'm switching parties. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. What? Yeah, what do you do? Now I'm a Republican. But you're faking it. Man, who says I'm faking it?
But I get to fake it. I mean, see, I call myself a Republican. I've joined this caucus. Or, by the way, I'm an independent. I'm no longer a Democrat.
Oh, well, you don't count. Sorry, it's not bipartisan.
You see where we go with this? This is so stupid.
That is true. It's a very bad idea but it's stupid and narrow-minded in ways that's what the problem solvers are. And ironically enough, again, can I remind everybody, the problem solvers is the no labels group. But if you don't put one of the two labels on yourself, you might not count for the bipartisan thing. Well, I thought you were for no labels. I'm really for labels. I'm actually
apparently
they're
for labels now.
Yeah, I like labels.
It's silly. It's stupid. It's ridiculous.
But yeah, we are conditioned in this country because it's been a two-party system for so long that if you say, well, both parties sign on to it, there's still 1 million people in the country who would say, I'm not in that part. And I don't forget independents. They'll say, I'm from another party. Sometimes I have no choice, so I vote for one or the other, but I'm not a member of these two parties, and we shouldn't have that be a formal rule. But we're still, blindly following along.
No labels, people. I'm in the Lieberman for Connecticut, or Connecticut for Lieberman party.
Right. And he should never have counted. I'm sorry, your vote doesn't count for anything. You're not one of the two parties. I'm an independent Democrat. Remember, even when he won, he came back and he insisted that his name, when it was in the paper, should say ID-CT. Independent Democrat, Connecticut. All right.
Your vote doesn't count.
Sorry, can't help you. So, I mean, as far as the idea of, I see what they're trying to get at. And expedited floor consideration for a bill with 290 co-sponsors. But that's, I'm not certain that I care, for one thing. Also because just like members will casually join caucuses and have no idea, or even join onto a Dear Colleague letter that circulates.
They'll put their name as a sponsor of some crappy bill.
Yes, they'll do that, and they have sometimes no idea that they've done it, and then that will determine what gets to the floor. But, I mean, again, if you have 290 real, live supporters of the bill, you can get that bill to the floor. You can sign a discharge petition. Do that.
Well, the problem with the in this 2-year period, the problem with that is, of course, you're going to have 200 Republicans.
Yeah.
And you can see some crappy, reform, in quotes, Social Security bill.
Yeah.
Getting 90 stupid Democrats. 40 because they're, whatever they are. 40 more because they're stupid, 10 for whatever other reason. Boom, you've all of a sudden blown up Social Security without anybody thinking about it. Here's the problem. Leadership actually thinks. It's their job to think about things. It's their job to protect members against tough votes. It's their job to say, well, what does this really mean? And it's their job to figure out, okay, well, now if we pass this and we get to conference, do you know what I mean? And what about the conference problems of these things? Because the House doesn't just pass laws by itself.
No. We're at the point now where I think a majority of members of perhaps both parties, both houses, I guess, but almost certainly the House, I would say a majority of the members of the House have never served in a Congress where conference committees were the norm.
True.
That's been gone, and it's like 15 plus years now. And
well, we're in a period where there's going to be, if there's much passed, most of the stuff's going to conference, because the two bills that come out of the two houses of Congress are going to be markedly different.
Yeah.
From the budget to anything you can think of.
If they want to pass it, I imagine it'll happen very rarely, because it'll very rarely be the case that they'll want to pass anything. And my guess is that
we'll take the things they have to pass.
Yeah.
Spending resolutions.
Even
they
so,
they got to fund the government.
My guess is that McConnell will sit on his hands, wait for a bill from the House, and just offer a complete substitute and send that back. And,
right.
And probably, I would imagine, decline to agree to conference. The House will send over a conference request, and the Senate will reject it. And Democrats will say, look, they're being obstructionist.
Unless they're going to shut down the government every year.
Yes.
But even then, you got to reopen it. A deal will need to be struck.
Yeah. At some point. There will occasionally be things like that. I don't know whether they will do it through conference or
This is just not the time for this nonsense. This is not the 2-year period with Donald Trump as president and a split Congress to be messing around with this nonsense. This is such a height of irresponsibility and stupidity. Thank God they have no chance to actually muck it up, I don't think. And we could talk about their chances of mucking it up if you want. But just doing this now, at this point in time, and they'll say, oh, there's never a good time. Well, there are better times. You know what would have been a good time? 2008. We had both houses of Congress. You could have said, well, we want to do it. The bipartisan thing probably wouldn't have gone over so well. But if you speak of it in terms of the power of individual members of the House to have some of their ideas considered or something like that, to democratize the House, if that's how you want to put it, which I think is what they're talking about, really. But now, this election, with this result, with this crazy man as president, this is just irresponsible. And frankly, I hope it carries with them for the rest of their careers. It's certainly going to, I think someone like Seth Moulton will have a hard time living this down, it seems to me. Yes, and if Josh Gottheimer starts going this way, he's going to have it too. He can be the congressman from Bergen County for the rest of his life, but, someone will hang this around his neck if he ever wants to run for state right office.
Yeah. Well, they very well may. And again, I'm not sure how.
Bergen County's in New Jersey. For
yes.
Non-New Jerseyans. It's a very wealthy part of New Jersey.
Yes, northern New Jersey along the Hudson, north of Newark. Torricelli's district.
Right, the Torch.
Yeah, so that's what I guess we're talking about when you say they can be the congressman from Bergen County for life. Bergen County is that kind of county.
It's very wealthy, and it had been sort of blue stocking for a while. You'd have that kind of Republican back when they existed. Tom Kaine. Think of Tom Kaine a little bit. That type of Republican. Senior, not junior. Senior. And being sort of a blue doggy, you gotta, but they love the bipartisan idea and problem solving.
Yes.
I see the political appeal for Gottheimer for his district of doing this on some level.
To say he's a bipartisan problem solver.
Right. I mean, I understand it, but to a point. I mean, just make it and do the little dog and pony show, but then, move on. And the reality is this is where I go with this, and we can talk about the merits or demerits, but it's January. Okay. Mm-hmm. In the next 2 days, they're going to vote out a caucus. By the way, Pelosi's having a meeting with Gottheimer this afternoon. I don't know what she'll give him. She'll give him a fig leaf if that's what he wants, I'm sure. If he actually wants something else, I don't know. Then it becomes a thing. But let's suppose it doesn't work out, and everyone's still where they are, and you have the vote in the next 2 days. It's a secret vote if they want, but I assume people can announce that they voted against, and that's something to watch. I'd see how many people want to announce they voted no. I bet you that number's a lot smaller than you would think.
Right.
Okay.
Although you can announce you voted no, having voted yes. There is that. You can do that.
Yeah, but that sort of defeats the purpose, I suppose. But
or you could vote. Yeah, you can vote no.
The one place you
can't
have a secret vote, though, is in January.
Right.
You're on the House floor, and you're voting for Speaker.
Yes. And you have to shout out your name.
Nancy Pelosi's at 2/16 of the votes. And there's 10 of you or whatever.
Right.
And if you all vote no, well, guess what? We're in chaos. We don't have a speaker. We got to do it again.
Yes, but if you vote no, everyone will say, "What do you mean?" That doesn't. Again, the voting is done by you call out a
consequential no, and I don't see more than five of them having the stones to actually take that vote.
Yeah. Well, because they got to come up with a name. You can't vote no. If you say no, they'll say, "Who are you talking about? Who's no?" Because the voting is the one time that they vote.
All right, they say the name,
not using yes, no.
Thomas Jefferson.
Right.
Whatever. They pick Seth Moulton.
Seth Moulton. No. Yeah, that's what they would have to do. So it happens from time to time.
Seth Moulton, and she's at 216.
You would have seen this probably every new Congress for the past 20 years. Somebody says something else. So
absolutely. I remember Gene Taylor used to always vote for somebody else, and Jim Cooper never voted for Pelosi. And Ryan, I think he ended up voting for her, but he did run against her, which I give him credit for. And he got 63 votes in the last for minority leader. So just run. You're a member of the Democratic caucus, and to me, I don't know what to make of it, and I would actually favor this rule because I believe in party discipline. Believe it or not, that is, if you do not vote for the choice of the caucus for Speaker, you're out of the caucus.
Then what are you going to do? You can't co-sponsor
because I would think should be one mandatory requirement to be a member of the Democratic caucus. Only one. You can do anything else to be a member, but you got to do one thing. You got to vote for the caucus's choice for Speaker, right? Isn't that fair to say?
It may not be necessary at all times, but I mean it's a rule. You could do that one. I mean, they worked around it because there were so many people that they said, "Well, we need their vote on other things, and it's not a big deal, and it's not going to change anything."
Vote if you want.
Taylor,
that's fine.
Right. So, but it's essentially asking you to support the primary winner.
Why do I care that Gene Taylor, for example, who was basically a Republican, called himself a Democrat? Why would I care?
I don't know.
I cared because he had a vote for Speaker, for the organization of the entire House of Representatives. He could vote against abortion. He could vote for just about anything else. And given his district, I'd rather have him than the other guy. But there's only one reason that I really wanted him than the other guy, even though he didn't do it. But I wonder if push came to shove, as you said, if I needed his vote, what would he do?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Right. We never got to that opportunity. It was never close. And I guess if that were it, then he might consider it because they might say, well, if they really put it to him, look, we're going to kick you out and you're going to lose your committee assignments.
And let's face it,
Republicans will give him.
If Gene Taylor was the deciding vote, you wouldn't have a Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. You'd have somebody else as Speaker. I mean that's politics, and I can buy that. If you got the deciding vote, well, I don't want her.
Yeah,
I want Steny Hoyer instead, or whoever he wanted.
Yeah, he kept saying Jack Murtha, but I'm not certain that
he funny because Pelosi loved Jack Murtha too.
Yeah, well, and that, I guess, gives you a little taste of the seriousness of his objection. He definitely objected to Pelosi, but he too had no idea who he was gonna vote for. So he said Jack Murtha. Why? because he's a Marine and everyone will be okay with my voting for him because he's a Marine and that's USA.
He's a working class, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. USA, it's okay. You know, I'm bipartisan because it's awesome, because everyone says so, and so are Marines. That's my vote. Okay, but Martha was a Pelosi loyalist.
Yeah, I know. And Martha and Pelosi obviously very close. For those who don't know, Pelosi basically ran Martha to defeat Hoyer.
Yes.
For the number 2 slot in, I think, 2004 or 2002. I forget the year. Maybe a little later than that.
4, because it was at least post 4, because it was the basis of it was Iraq War voting.
Right.
And
so
that's where we all learned
won the House in 2006.
That those votes are not ideological. They're about money. And Murtha had never really made a serious bid for top leadership before, and didn't have the track record of financial support for Democrats.
Checks like a madman his whole life.
And it worked. And huge swaths of the progressive caucus and the informal anti-war caucus voted for Hoyer because they didn't consider it an ideological vote.
And
could it have been? Should it have been? Maybe.
I understand that thinking. I really do. I mean, you got to win to actually make a difference. I understand that.
Yeah.
And Murtha wasn't helping them win. He didn't give them any money.
Right. That's not. I mean, he campaigned for a lot of them. True, but it was only only lately he had done that. And by the way, I mean the rest of his career. I mean, people admired him for various reasons, and some of them were good, but prior to that, the hallmark of Jack Murtha's career was sitting on the Appropriations Committee and being a prick to everybody. Like, you want a project? Well, screw you, because no. You know, that project's, first of all, that project's going in Jack Murtha's district. Second of all, you know, who the hell are you to tell me that? All right, fine. Oh, and then all of a sudden, well, I want your vote. Yeah, you do, huh? Well, I wanted that project.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of shit saved up in the negative way there, boy.
Mm-hmm.
Murtha was a jerk. I mean, and super conservative, anti-choice. There's a million reasons not to like Jack Murtha, but you're right. At that point in time, Murtha's turning on the Iraq War was important.
Yes.
And you know, I've Steny Hoyer. Steny Hoyer's a hard guy to figure out.
He is. He's more conservative than a lot of people like, but man, by the way, you want a guy who will never, cross the line and vote for someone other than who the caucus chooses or who gets nominated, whatever.
Exactly.
Steny Hoyer is as rock solid a Democratic vote as you can find.
Yep.
But he's a conservative guy, so people don't like him too much among our progressive circles.
Well, and one of the things that Hoyer's did and does is he always looks out for the blue dogs.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's an important function of a leader.
Yes.
And he will tell Pelosi, I believe, I think their relationship's decent now. I'm sure they still hate each other, but by and large, I'm sure their working relationship's probably okay. And just say, look, we can't put this vote on these guys. They can't go back and defend it. And she'll find ways to not put them out to the test. Now, this is why you say something about the freshmen who don't know what they're doing. I agree with you. They don't understand that. And from the beginning, it sounded good. I'm not for Pelosi. It's going to help me in this election.
Right.
But you know what? The Democrats weren't focusing on it because they didn't think you were serious about it. All those Democrats who have to come out and vote for you and volunteer for you and give you money, they weren't listening. All right, she's just saying that. Who cares?
Yes.
But if you actually mean it and do it, you're not going to win re-election, even in your purple or red district. You know why? Because there are Democrats there too, and you need them all to come out, and you need them all to help you and volunteer and give you money. And if they don't, it doesn't matter what happens to you, how many couple stray Republicans you can lure over to the other side. You need every single Democrat.
Yes.
Abigail Spanberger, I think, is someone who might have learned that lesson, though I'm not sure where she ended up on this still.
Well, she's mentioned in one of the articles today. But I guess I would reiterate that historically, your first race for re-election is your most vulnerable. Period.
Absolutely.
And you can be most easily replaced either in primary, although that's usually not how it happens, but the general election usually displaces you. But if you get kneecapped in a primary, you might be gone. And
you're right. That's the first thing. You're going to face a primary, which is terrible for you.
Yeah.
Because in your first race after, you need all your money for the general election anyway. Second of all, there's going to be hard feelings, and you're going to have to spend time unifying, which, by the way, means you have to go reach out to the left. So doing all that stuff you did about Nancy Pelosi just completely backfired for you, because now you've got to have to say things to shore up your left base.
Right. And in all likelihood, you had a competitive primary your first time around, and you won, and people were willing to put their differences aside to elect a Democrat. But if it was close or even near close, there's a person who has an organization who's out there, and day one they're dissatisfied with you. People are already, I think it's foolish or premature to be running around saying, well, we're going to primary this person and starting to organize it already. But that's a great scare tactic too. I mean, you just finished this race, and if you had a close primary and somebody says, I'm just going to keep my mailing list, I'm going to keep my list, and I'm going to primary you come next time, because we buried the hatchet because it was for the good of the party, and then the first thing you did was screw up the party.
I think it's political disaster, and frankly, any Democrat who actually, other than the ones who are, safe districts, Tim Ryan, those types.
Yeah. Then they can, I guess, play that game.
They're going to be gone. They cannot take this vote.
All right.
It's irresponsible of these people to make them take this vote.
And that's, I guess, why you're beginning to see those people abandon their leaders there. All right, we'll take a short break. Probably time to move on from the topic. There are plenty more to get to.
I'm going to hang up and let you move on to your new stuff.
All right.
It was fun.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We may have stepped on that one a little bit early there, but okay, no problem. It'll come out in editing and post, as they say in the industry I'm not in, the film industry. I guess before we totally move on from this, maybe we'll throw this piece out here from The Intercept. Ryan Grimm has this piece. Who's the mystery man? Is there a mystery man? Who's the mystery man behind the latest Pelosi putsch? Everyone is enjoying that alliterative line there. Well, the answer is it's Mark Penn, who sucks and is horrible. And no one can figure him out because he doesn't seem to stand for anything in particular. And it's crazy that he was ever closely associated with Hillary Clinton. People get associated with weird people. They do things that they shouldn't over the length of their careers. Mark Penn is garbage, and he's got dandruff as well in this picture that accompanies the Intercept article. So what's the deal here? Ryan puts it this way. A small group of billionaire-backed Democrats, how do you like that, part of the so-called Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress, has launched a last-ditch effort that threatens to derail Nancy Pelosi's election as House Speaker. I don't think it does, but let's see. Maybe I'm missing something. They've framed their challenge to Pelosi, a California Democrat, I know, in terms of good government and high-minded bipartisanship, which isn't a value, I don't think. Anyway, yet the force behind their campaign is one of the most toxic and notorious partisan warriors in the Democratic Party, or that the Democratic Party has produced in the past 3 decades, political and corporate consultant Mark Penn. The Problem Solvers Caucus is made up of 12 Democrats and 12 Republicans. Whoopee-doo. So is the Super Committee. 9 of the Democrats have publicly committed to opposing Pelosi on the House floor if she doesn't meet their demands for House rules change largely aimed at legislatively empowering Republicans. We didn't really get to the explainer. I'm going to include it in the roundup for you via Scott, but maybe later in the process we'll take another peek at the rules proposals and dissect them for what they are. but I don't think it's absolutely necessary today. Suffice to say, I think most of the analysis is that they will legislatively empower Republicans at a time that we really ought to be neutering them. Combined with the holdouts from the last putsch effort, there would be enough votes to thwart Pelosi. Which one? Last time, like the previous Congress? The Democratic chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus is Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, who has been a protege of Penn's, which is amazing, since the 1990s, when he was just out of college. Gottheimer is one of the 9 members making demands of Pelosi. She and the caucus will meet Tuesday, that's today, in the afternoon to go over the group's demands. We'll go right over them. And now they'll go right into the garbage. We'll see. We'll see what kind of leverage they bring. The caucus was born out of meetings of congresspeople organized by No Labels, which was founded in 2010 as a bipartisan group backed by wealthy donors, ostensibly dedicated to civility and good government. Nancy Jacobson, Penn's wife, is the No Labels CEO, and Penn is also closely involved with the group. Gottheimer was elected to Congress in 2016, so he's a relative newbie, and co-founded the caucus with Representative Tom Reed, Democrat of New York, shortly thereafter. So he's in his second term. A big leader he is. The links between Gottheimer and Penn go back decades. Gottheimer was Penn's assistant in the Bill Clinton White House in the 1990s. So they came from relatively good stock. I mean, our progressive wing will have problems with him, but he was solidly Democratic at some point. But Penn has changed since then, and annoyingly so. Then in 2006, when Penn was CEO of the consulting firm Burson Marsteller, he hired Gottheimer as an executive vice president, with Gottheimer reporting directly to him. When Penn became chief strategist of Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign, the bad old days, he brought on Gottheimer as an advisor. In 2012, Penn set up shop at Microsoft, where he built a guerrilla PR operation to do battle in Washington with rival Google. Hooray. There, too, he brought on Gottheimer. Gottheimer had the full-throated support of both Bill and Hillary Clinton when he ran for Congress in 2016, with Hillary Clinton calling him something of a family member. That I don't know. Maybe in your families, that's not necessarily so great. No Labels launched what it called the Speaker Project in this past June, and this is really, I guess, the interesting nugget of this and a few other stories now circulating on the subject, proposing a sweeping set of rules changes that lawmakers should demand before agreeing to elect the next speaker, which by then was presumed to be a Democrat. The next month, the Problem Solvers Caucus embraced the plan. In September, Penn went on Tucker Carlson's show, which is a bad idea always, on Fox News to talk up the project. There's a Problem Solvers group that is looking to have some influence if the result is close in terms of changing the rules and naming the speaker, Penn said. A lawsuit this summer by former No Labels contractors who alleged that they were bilked by the group claimed that Penn was, quote, calling the shots at the organization. Penn, according to the Washington Post, has denied involvement with the operation of No Labels, and the group rejected the assertion that he was in charge. Neither No Labels nor Penn responded to The Intercept's questions about Penn's relationship with the group. But aside from the claims of the contractors, there are also direct links between groups Penn owns, interesting way of putting things, and No Labels political activity. Penn is a minority owner of the consulting firm Targeted Victory, which the group contracted with for some of its 2018 campaigns, which is a neat little trick by which most political consultants make probably most of their money in between campaign years. But, it's self-dealing, but nobody seems to want to call them on that. No Labels uses an affiliate, Victory Passport, for its online fundraising. Penn's firm, Harris Interactive, does the group's polling. SKD Knickerbocker, it's a famous name and I've never really gotten used to pronouncing it out loud, of which Penn is an owner, produces and places the group's television ads, as it did in its campaign to support the reelection of Representative Dan Lipinski of Illinois, according to the lawsuit. Hillary Rosen, an SKDK partner, they just shortened the Knickerbocker to K, SKDK partner, said that the firm does not produce ads for No Labels. So they do, they don't. We own it, we don't own it. All the various consultancies I own consult for the group. Yes, no, I own the group, basically. That's how you end up calling the shots. The New Center, really? That's the name of it. The New Center. Oh, I see. It's not the New Center, but the New Center. A think tank launched by No Labels to house its 501c3 nonprofit operation, listed Mark Penn as a contact for inquiries about its invitation-only Ideas Summit. I hate those. Penn is managing partner and president of the Stagwell Group. He's president of everything, apparently. The holding company that owns SKDK. Penn regularly talks up the great work of No Labels during his appearances on Fox News. The network of super PACs linked to No Labels, which go by a variety of names according to a Sun-Times investigation, including United for Progress, Citizens for a Strong America, United Together, I feel like there should be patriotic music playing for this, and Govern or Go Home, spent millions in the 2018 midterms, mostly to help elect members of the Problem Solvers Caucus. Its most high-profile intervention came in defense of Lipinski, a conservative Democrat who faced a well-organized primary challenge from progressive Marie Newman, winning by just 2,000 votes. Pelosi backed Lipinski in the primary, and now he's a part of the effort to block her speakership. The Daily Beast reported Monday that Jacobson considered Pelosi's support of Lipinski insufficient, and the group considered making her a boogeyman. And I'm going to say it as boogeyman the way we all do as kids. They ultimately settled on attacking Senator Bernie Sanders instead. Well, okay. No Labels Super PAC also spent heavily to beat incoming Representative Deb Haaland, I'm going to guess is the pronunciation. Remember, I had some difficulty with that one. 2 A's. Haaland, who nonetheless prevailed in New Mexico and will soon be one of the first 2 Native American members of Congress. I'm sorry, what? One of the first 2 Native American members of Congress? That's not right. But okay, maybe from New Mexico. I mean, one of the first 2. I mean, there are 2 Native American members of Congress coming in now, but I mean, there have been. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Native Americans have something else to say about it. But wasn't Ben Nighthorse Campbell, senator from Colorado, Native American? Maybe the first Native Americans in the House, which is weird that we did it backwards. Usually the first comes in the House and then, all right. But okay. Pelosi will meet Tuesday afternoon with members of the Problem Solvers Caucus to hear out their demands. One of the initial planks of the Speaker project was that the House Speaker should be a bipartisan position. Oh, my God. All right. That was one of their things. One of the initial planks of the Speaker project was that the House Speaker should be a bipartisan position. No, it shouldn't. It never has been. Can't be. Don't know how you would work that. Stupid idea. With the Speaker needing 5 more votes than the number of their majority party. That's how they would. Oh, I see. That's how they would make it a bipartisan position. If you don't have the number of members of your party plus 5, then so even more deadlock. That's stupid. That demand has been dialed back, but the rules changes being called for are in a similar vein, with the purpose of stripping power from the majority party and requiring Republican support for legislation. P.S., by the way, again, a reminder that the House redoes its rules every time with every new Congress. Republicans would just, if they were the majority, they would just strip that rule straight back out. No matter, even if there were members of the Problem Solvers Caucus who were Republicans, they wouldn't be able to protect that. And once again, Democrats would adopt rules to handicap themselves in the majority. Republicans would get rid of them when they were in the majority. Penn is notorious in Washington as the metaphorical devil on the shoulder, whispering toxic advice into the ears of Democratic candidates. That's Ryan speaking for you. I mean, he's right, but You wouldn't ordinarily find that in other reporting, which is a good thing. I'm glad it's in the Intercept's reporting. Penn and Jacobson were both early players in the Democratic Leadership Council, a faction that emerged within the party in the 1980s, and of which Bill Clinton was the head by the time he was elected, and so it stands to reason. A faction that emerged within the party in the 1980s to push it to align with corporate money, everyone loves that, and to move in a more conservative direction. He's perhaps most well known for urging his client, Hillary Clinton, to attack Barack Obama as un-American during the 2008 presidential primary. It worked really well. In a now famous 2007 memo to Clinton, Penn noted that there had been much coverage in the media of Obama's boyhood in Indonesia and his life in Hawaii, geared towards showing his background is diverse, multicultural, and putting that in a new light. Save it for 2050. In other words, Penn argued, an appeal to diversity wouldn't work politically for another half century. I cannot imagine America electing a president during a time of war who is not at his center fundamentally American in his thinking and in his values, he wrote, which of course Barack Obama was, but the idea was, well, his name is Barack Hussein Obama, so he can't be. Again, didn't work very well. How Penn planned to isolate Obama's alleged otherness is a window into how he views the kind of glossy good government rhetoric now deployed by No Labels. Its meaning is found less in what it says than in what it doesn't. He advised Clinton that, quote, we give some life to this contrast without turning negative, unquote, by elevating the values she grew up with as uniquely American. Every speech should contain the line, you were born in the middle of America to the middle class in the middle of the last century. That, Penn argued, would make an implicit contrast with Obama, who allegedly lacked those values, fairness, compassion, responsibility, giving back, due to his lack of American roots, which he didn't lack. Let's explicitly own American in our programs. Okay, so you can see he's a super jerk, and he was extraordinarily disgusting and divisive in service of his favored candidate, as sometimes happens, but he also happens to be a jerk on top of that, and it's sort of a permanent condition with him. You get the idea. Clemson, see what I'm doing here? Watch this. Clinton, clumsy in her rhetoric, and that's out the window now, because how can I accuse her of being clumsy? When I combine Clinton and clumsy into Clemson, it's amazing. Clinton, clumsy in her rhetoric, would occasionally make the subtext into text. In a 2008 speech in West Virginia after she beat Obama in Indiana, she said Senator Obama's support among hard-working Americans, white Americans, is weakening again. Brr. Yeah. Obama went on to win Indiana in the general election. A more effective dog whistler in the 2016 campaign would boil the Penn approach down to just 4 words, make America great again. Donald Trump was named by No Labels in 2016 as an official problem solver. That seems pretty dumb. A Trump surrogate accepted the award, even though 2 months earlier Trump had spoken at a No Labels conference and delivered a speech larded with Trumpisms. Since his 2017 swearing in, Gottheimer, the problem solver's caucus chair, has voted with Trump more than half the time. According to 538, Jon Favreau, a longtime aide to Obama, that Jon Favreau, and a co-founder of Crooked Media, said that the No Labels Problem Solvers Caucus focus on Pelosi makes little sense with Mitch McConnell in the Senate and Trump in the White House, given how little interest those two have shown in civility and bipartisanship. But an incoherent strategy was not terribly surprising coming from Penn. You mean the guy who Laura Ingraham recently praised for sounding just like her? Favreau said of Penn, sterling track record of success as a consultant. I'd rather light my money on fire than use it to hire him for literally anything. And I think that's an apt conclusion to the piece. Now, I said that there were other things that were more important than there are, but, that's what the program is about, democratic politics. A couple of comments on the very long extended segment on the program, or on the issue. And let's see if any of them need specifically to be addressed. Let's see. Monica asking here, can you comment on the rumored Senate move to kick out Kamala Harris from the Judiciary Committee? I am not familiar with it. Wouldn't surprise me, but that certainly that Republicans would want her gone. It will require Democrats wanting her gone too, and I don't know if they want that. They might. Who knows? Weirder things have happened. The composition of the committees is determined by resolutions adopted at the beginning of, again, at the beginning of the new Congress by the Senate. They'll essentially, the two parties have their own caucuses / conferences, and they have their own various mechanisms inside of the party to determine who gets what seats on which committees, and then they put that forward, and the general procedure from there on has traditionally been, you're going to have this many seats, you're going to have that many seats. Name the people you want, hand in the list, and everybody agrees to adopt the organizing resolution, or resolutions, as the case may be, in order to populate the committees for the new Congress. Generally speaking, the parties don't give a damn one way or the other unless there's some reason for them to care or some extraordinary leverage that can be exercised. The fact that Republicans don't like Kamala Harris won't influence typically the Democratic caucus in their decision to keep her on that committee. Now, if there's opposition to her inside of the Democratic Party, that's a different story. Sometimes you can sort of do it strategically. Like, for instance, if Republicans had won a large number of seats in the Senate instead of looks like it might be a net 2 or something. When the composition of the Senate changes, the composition of the committees change. When the committees are near 50-50, there's leverage inside of the way the Senate works to demand division of the committees at as close to 50-50 as possible, given that Republicans, as the majority, or whoever the majority party is, will demand most often a one-seat majority, at the very least, in every committee. So, you have a good idea of how many seats you're going to get, and that's open for negotiation at the beginning of each Congress. There's no formula for it, per se. It's basically whatever you can get away with, but typically it tends to mirror the composition of the Senate itself for various reasons, not the least of which is that's the least objectionable and the way it's always been done and the least likely to draw opposition and or a possible filibuster. Yes, you can filibuster the organizing resolutions. In fact, probably offhand, I haven't done the numbers and the counting yet, but now might be a good time for Democrats to filibuster the organizing resolutions of the Senate. But anyway, I guess what's possibly happening here is they may say, well, with 52 or 53 Republican senators, we have the margin. They may have perhaps had more than, the Republicans may have given more seats on the Judiciary Committee in particular to Democrats than they had to last time around, and they may say, well, with a greater majority, we're going to eliminate one Democratic seat on the Judiciary Committee and transfer that to the Republicans. And typically what ends up happening is the most junior in terms of seniority on the committee among the Democrats would be the odd person out on that. And maybe that would be Kamala Harris. I don't know if that's absolutely the case, but it's a pretty good guess. And maybe they're pulling it that way as opposed to coming straight out and targeting her openly. They might be doing it sort of surreptitiously that way. All right. I think that may be it. Well, we'll study up on it if that's not exactly it. And let's see. Among the other stories worthy of consideration today, well, we could shift gears. Well, what have I got here? Something from Greg. What story are we looking at? Okay. Well, I guess we're going to have to move on to this one. Kate Sherrill suggests this, and everybody else is talking about it. That's the other big story of the day is Paul Manafort and what's going on with his case. And man, it's I don't know is the answer. We're really going to have to just read and find out. What Kate has sent us here is Natasha Bertrand's story here. Manafort and her tweet accompanying, I'm sorry, it's probably not her story, it's from The Guardian. Her tweet says Manafort, there's like the sirens. Manafort visited Assange in spring of 2016. To catch you up with what's going on that I was able to glean from just following along on Twitter this morning, Manafort's in trouble again. He's convicted. He's got a plea agreement in place. And the news of the day is that Mueller's office says they plan to tell the court that Manafort has not complied with the agreement, that he has, while under the plea agreement, and while he was supposed to be cooperating with investigators, he continued to lie to them and mislead them. And there's all sorts of implications to that. One of which is, of course, that he could face even more jail time, and the other of which is even more complex and might end up just blowing the lid off of the thing we've been waiting for the whole time with the Trump-Russia investigation. But first, let's take a quick look at this Guardian piece. Now, literally everyone on Twitter is talking about it, and they're passing it around as, let's say, Phil Elliott is doing right now, with the standing caveat of, if true, this Guardian story about Trump campaign chairman meeting with WikiLeaks in London 3 times is a major threat to the president's claims of no collusion. There's an awful lot going on, and I guess we're just going to have to open up the article and read up. And then at some point after that, we might be able to share some speculation about what might be going on in his case and what it means. Manafort held secret talks with Assange in Ecuadorian embassy. This again, according to The Guardian, who has written the piece, Luke Harding and Dan Collins, based in Quito. So there you go. They're at the home base of the Ecuadorian government, and interesting. I didn't expect to see that as the byline. Exclusive: Trump ally, that's Manafort. He was the campaign manager. You may have heard of him. Met WikiLeaks founder months before emails hacked by Russia were published. One might wonder, what was Paul Manafort doing meeting with Julian Assange at all? And to do it 3 times and in advance of his more obvious role in the campaign, I guess just means it was a long time coming and planned long in advance. We're bumping up against our next break. We're about a minute and a half away from the music, but let's start. Why not? We'll interrupt it and all that, but Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, held secret talks with Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he's holed up, of course, and visited around the time he joined Trump's campaign, The Guardian has been told. That seems like pretty amazing. And again, I guess it's the if true thing. Sources have said Manafort went to see Assange in 2013, that's way early, 2015, and in the spring of 2016, during the period when he was made a key figure in Trump's push for the White House. That would be the 2016 date. 2013 and 15 are mystery dates, except, of course, if the plot to run Trump for president and then use the run as an excuse for releasing material that WikiLeaks either had or was going, I don't know, could even have been material that was going to be manufactured and handed over to them in anticipation of a race against Hillary Clinton. I don't know. But it does, well, It raises a lot of questions, that's for sure. All right. So almost time to bring up our music here. Let's see if we can sneak in another paragraph or two just to set things up for before the break. It is unclear why Manafort wanted to see Assange and what was discussed. But the last meeting is likely to come under scrutiny and could interest Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor who's investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. No collusion, no collusion. The guy who happened to choose, the guy who happened to agree to run your campaign for free was just a frequent visitor to Julian Assange for no particular reason. Okay, sure. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I guess we're going to have to continue on with this very exciting thing here, but I do have, just in case we can't get all the way through what appears to be a relatively lengthy article, I will share with you something Armando sent our way. Ryan Goodman, and he being co-editor-in-chief of Just Security and a chaired professor at NYU Law. How do you like that? Summarizes the article this way. Very big scoop. Manafort held secret talks with Assange. A meeting occurred around March 2016. That was the last of the three. Then this timeline. Late February, I guess 2016, Manafort pitches Trump to join the campaign. Manafort longtime friend Roger Stone recommends hiring Manafort. And then in March, Trump officially hires Manafort. And then I guess the actual meeting taking place. I guess I'll put this out there. One, lots of people saying, oh, well, again, big if true. Others out there tweeting, yeah, it is true. And just for the sake of adding some devil's advocate element to the picture, but it's a very interesting one in that. Glenn Greenwald, who I think you would probably guess, and you'd be right, offhand saying, Glenn Greenwald would probably be there saying, yeah, this story isn't true, and he may or may not have reasons for thinking that, but, he's a big Julian Assange fan. I guess what's really ironic in all this, like Glenn tweets, and he includes, he embeds the tweet of Eva Gollinger, who I am not familiar with. She begins by saying, or I guess it's a whole chain of events here. Maybe we should read it all. Glenn, I guess, begins here. Which is true? The Guardian's anonymous claims or WikiLeaks' vehement denials? I guess he, having read the article, observes that the Guardian has no one on record, coming out on record and on the record, making these accusations, all anonymous accusations, which, that sometimes happens these days. Which is true, the Guardian's anonymous claims or WikiLeaks' vehement denials? You can pick which to believe based on which one most advances your political narrative, or refrain from forming judgments until evidence is available. I'm going to opt for the latter course, although I suspect he is instead actually going to choose to believe someone based on which one advances his political narrative. He'll deny that, but look, I think we all do that, and so that's the gentlest way of saying I think we all know what his decision is going to be on that one. And he includes two screenshots, one of the headline of this Guardian piece, the other WikiLeaks denial, I guess, which says, remember this day when the Guardian permitted a serial fabricator to totally destroy the paper's reputation. WikiLeaks is willing to bet the Guardian $1 million and its editor's head, oh my, that Manafort never met Assange. So that's the claim. What is driving that? I don't know. Glenn then tweets, did The Guardian seek comment from WikiLeaks or Assange before publishing its story? The article says it sought comment from Manafort's lawyer, but not WikiLeaks or Assange. Eva Gollinger then replying, also, this seems important, embassy employees who were there during the entire time period say they never saw Manafort or heard of his visit. I'm not certain that they would have known who he was, but they do say this. Senane is, I guess we're talking about, I don't even know. I know that there's been a recent change in the Ecuadorian government, and I guess that's who we're talking about here. But Senane is apparently the National Intelligence Secretariat of Ecuador. Ava says that Senane is out for Julian Assange because he published their internal documents. That could very well be true. They seek an excuse to get him out of the embassy. Seems The Guardian is playing along, is Ava's charge. Now, back to the tweet I originally grabbed from Glenn Greenwald saying, there are so many weird aspects to The Guardian story beyond the fact that it doesn't describe its sources or show any evidence. But nobody cares. People will claim it's true or not based solely on whether they want it to be. Waiting for evidence is a Kremlin tactic. Haha. Hilarious. Anyway, what I find kind of interesting about it is I'm old enough to remember when The Guardian was awesome and the only truth-telling media outlet out there when they were publishing Glenn Greenwald's articles of all kinds and mainly about Julian Assange and what he was up to. But now all of a sudden they suck. What can I tell you? It does happen. All right, but here's what they have to say. We might as well now let you judge for yourself. We told you that there were 3 meetings in 2013, 15, and the spring of 2016. Compare that to Ryan Goodling's timeline that basically says he's out there meeting with them, and the meeting occurred in March of 2016. In February, he's pitching Trump to join the campaign, Manafort is, and then I guess he figures he'll lock it up by going to see Julian Assange and then coming and saying, I can get you to win. I can win this campaign for you. I'm talking to Julian Assange. He's got dirt. We'll use it. That's how we'll win. Hire me for nothing, for some strange reason. So we left off by saying it was unclear why Manafort wanted to see Assange and what was discussed, but the last meeting is likely to come under scrutiny and could interest Robert Mueller. A well-placed source has told The Guardian that Manafort went to see Assange around March of 2016. Months later, WikiLeaks released a stash of Democratic emails stolen by Russian intelligence officers. Manafort, 69, denies involvement in the hack and says the claim is 100% false. His lawyers declined to answer The Guardian's questions about the visits. Manafort was jailed this year and was thought to have become a star cooperator in the Mueller inquiry, but on Monday, Mueller said Manafort had repeatedly lied to the FBI, despite agreeing to cooperate 2 months ago in a plea deal. And we'll read their linked article about that, perhaps, to catch up on that news. According to a court document, Manafort had committed crimes and lies on a variety of subject matters. His defense team says he believes what he has told Mueller to be truthful and has not violated the deal. Manafort's first visit to the embassy took place a year after Assange sought asylum inside, 2 sources said. A separate internal document written by Ecuador's Senine intelligence agency, I would have learned if I had read, and seen by The Guardian, lists Paul Manafort, and that's sick, that's their own mistake, as one of several well-known guests. It also mentions Russians. That's not terribly helpful, but there you have it. According to 2 sources, Manafort returned to the embassy in 2015. He paid another visit in the spring of 2016, turning up alone around the time Trump named him as his convention manager. The visit is tentatively dated to March. Manafort's 2016 visit to Assange lasted about 40 minutes, one source said, adding that the American was casually dressed when he exited the embassy, wearing sandy-colored chinos, a cardigan, and a light-colored shirt. Visitors normally register with embassy security guards and show their passports. Sources in Ecuador, however, say Manafort was not logged. Well, okay. Embassy staff were aware only later of the potential significance of Manafort's visit and his political role with Trump, it is understood. The revelation could shed new light on the sequence of events in the run-up to summer 2016, when WikiLeaks published tens of thousands of emails hacked by the GRU, Russia's military intelligence agency. Hillary Clinton has said the hack contributed to her defeat. The previously unreported Manafort-Assange connection is likely to be of interest to Mueller, who has been investigating possible contacts between WikiLeaks and associates of Trump, including the political lobbyist Roger Stone and Donald Trump Jr. One key question is when the Trump campaign was aware of the Kremlin's hacking operation, and what, if anything, it did to encourage it. Russia, if you're listening. That's pretty clear. Trump has repeatedly denied collusion. Earlier this year, Mueller indicted 12 GRU intelligence officers for carrying out the hack, which began in March of 2016. In June of that year, WikiLeaks emailed the GRU via an intermediary seeking the DNC material. After failed attempts, Vladimir Putin's spies sent the documents in mid-July to WikiLeaks as an encrypted attachment. According to sources, Manafort's acquaintance with Assange goes back at least 5 years to late 2012 or 2013, when the American was working in Ukraine and advising its Moscow-friendly president, Viktor Yanukovych. Why Manafort sought out Assange in 2013 is unclear. During this period, the veteran consultant was involved in black operations against Yanukovych's chief political rival, Yulia Tymoshenko, whom Yanukovych had jailed. Manafort ran an extensive lobbying operation featuring European former politicians. He flew frequently from the U.S. to Ukraine's capital, Kiev, usually via Frankfurt, but sometimes through London, flight records seen by The Guardian show. That's, of course, where Assange was. Manafort is currently in jail in Alexandria, Virginia. In August, a jury convicted him of crimes arising from his decade-long activities in Ukraine. They include large-scale money laundering and failure to pay U.S. tax. Manafort pleaded guilty to further charges in order to avoid a second trial in Washington. As well as accusing him of lying on Monday, the special counsel moved to set a date for Manafort to be sentenced. One person familiar with WikiLeaks said Assange was motivated to damage the Democrats' campaign because he believed the future Trump administration would be less likely to seek his extradition on possible charges of espionage. This fate had hung over Assange since 2010 when he released confidential U.S. State Department cables. It contributed to his decision to take refuge in the embassy. According to the dossier written by the former MI6 officer Christopher Steele, we're back to that, Manafort was at the center of a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between the Trump campaign and Russia's leadership. The two sides had a mutual interest in defeating Clinton, Steele wrote, whom Putin hated and feared. In a memo written soon after the DNC emails were published, Steele said the hacking operation had been conducted with the full knowledge and support of Trump and senior members of his campaign team. As a candidate, Trump warmly welcomed the dump of DNC emails by Assange. In October 2016, he declared, "I love WikiLeaks." Trump's comments came after WikiLeaks released a second tranche of emails seized from the email account of John Podesta, Clinton's campaign chairman. The Trump White House subsequently sent out mixed messages over Assange and his legal fate. In 2017, and behind the scenes, Assange tried to reach a deal with Trump's Department of Justice that might see him avoid U.S. prison. In May of 2017, Manafort flew to Ecuador to hold talks with the country's president-elect, Lenin Moreno. The discussions, days before Moreno was sworn in and before Manafort was indicted, were ostensibly about large-scale Chinese investment. However, one source in Quito suggests that Manafort also discreetly raised Assange's plight. Another senior foreign ministry source said he was skeptical Assange was mentioned. At the time, Moreno was expecting to continue support for him. Last week, a court filing released in error suggested that the U.S. Justice Department had secretly charged Assange with a criminal offense. Written by the U.S. Attorney, Kellen Dwyer, the document did not say what Assange had been charged with or when the alleged offense took place. Well, okay, that gives us a flavor for what's going on the Assange end of things. I also have the Guardian's linked article from John Swain about Manafort's own legal situation. Paul Manafort breached the plea deal by repeatedly lying in Russia inquiry, Mueller says. And here's where things move a little closer to the Trump axis. Former Trump campaign chairman's lies amount to new crimes, and the deal no longer stands, according to special counsel. That's bad news for Manafort himself and for his lawyers. What would be driving him to do this is the question. Paul Manafort repeatedly lied to investigators even after agreeing to cooperate with the investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election, special counsel Robert Mueller said late on Monday. Manafort, Donald Trump's former campaign chair, breached the plea agreement he signed in September by lying to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the special counsel's office on a variety of subject matters, Mueller said in a court filing. Mueller did not specify what Manafort lied about, but said the lies amounted to new crimes. Investigators are no longer bound by their side of the deal, which included a reduced sentence for crimes Manafort previously admitted, Mueller said. That's bad news, like I said. Manafort, 69 again, denied Mueller's new allegations. He believes he's provided truthful information and does not agree with the government's characterization or that he has breached the agreement, Monday's court filing said. Both sides agreed that in light of the cooperation agreement's collapse, Judge Amy Berman Jackson of the federal court in Washington, D.C. should proceed with sentencing Manafort, who could now face more than a decade in prison. All right, and I guess the filing is embedded here for us to review. But moving on with the article, Mueller said his team would file a comprehensive account of Manafort's crimes and lies to the court for consideration in the sentencing. Manafort has been in prison since June when his bail was revoked and he was charged with witness tampering. He's really doing everything he can to hurt himself. Witness tampering and continuing to lie to the FBI under a plea agreement. Well, let's find out about that. The latest remarkable turn in the Trump-Russia inquiry came only hours after a new attack against Mueller was posted on Twitter by the president, who has the power to pardon Manafort for any federal crimes, including those already admitted by Manafort and those alleged by Mueller on Monday. Danger? We'll find out. Mueller is investigating Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. I think you know about that, which U.S. intelligence agencies concluded was aimed at boosting Trump's bid for the White House and any collusion between Russian operatives and the Trump campaign team. Trump, who has repeatedly accused the special counsel of targeting him for a witch hunt, claimed on Monday there was no collusion and Mueller knows it. It was not immediately clear whether Mueller had suffered a setback on Monday. While the special counsel lost the cooperation of one of Trump's most senior campaign aides, his court filing indicated that he had information that Manafort did not know he had, and that it was damaging enough to for Manafort to lie about. The detailed sentencing submission promised by Mueller on Monday could also allow him to disclose any evidence of collusion he has uncovered without needing to go through a formal process of reporting to the Attorney General. Earlier this month, Trump appointed Matthew Whitaker, a sharp critic of Mueller, as acting Attorney General after firing Jeff Sessions, who had recused himself from the Russia inquiry. And so that's the most exciting part about it. The sentencing submission may have accompanying it a vast swath of the evidence that Mueller has collected against both Manafort and Trump and those in their greater circle. That's the most interesting part. Manafort agreed in September that he would assist government prosecutors in any and all matters, briefing them about his participation in and knowledge of all criminal activities. He also agreed to turn over documents and testify in other cases. As part of the deal, Manafort pleaded guilty to conspiring to defraud the U.S. and conspiring to obstruct justice in relation to his unregistered lobbying work for pro-Russian politicians in Ukraine. other charges against him were dropped. By then, Manafort had, in August, been convicted of 8 counts in a separate fraud case brought against him by Mueller in Virginia. Manafort is scheduled to be sentenced in the Virginia case in February. Trump's legal team claimed to have remained in contact with Manafort during the former campaign chairman's cooperation with Mueller, which, if accurate, would be a highly unusual arrangement. The collapse of Manafort's cooperation agreement also followed the submission by the president of written answers to questions from Mueller. And that becomes important too. Now, to try and tie those things together, I have an entry from Marcy Wheeler at emptywheel.net, who likes to get out in front on the speculation and puts this one out under the headline of Mueller just guaranteed he can issue a public report. We just learned that from the Guardian piece here, and I think that's what she is relying on for the news hook here. Back when Paul Manafort first entered a plea agreement, I argued, and it is linked here, the effects of it could not be pardoned away. And here she quotes herself. Here's why this deal is pardon-proof. 1. Mueller spent the hour-and-a-half delay in arraignment for, who? For Manafort? Which arraignment are we talking about here? Does it really matter? I'm not certain whether it absolutely... Yeah, I guess so. Okay. And we can look at the argument, but Mueller spent the hour-and-a-half delay in arraignment doing something. It's possible Manafort even presented the key parts of testimony Mueller needs from him to the grand jury this morning. 2, the forfeiture in his plea is both criminal and civil, meaning Department of Justice will be able to get Manafort's $46 million even with a pardon. And 3, some of the dismissed charges are financial ones that can be charged in various states. So again, that was Empty Wheel arguing back in September that the deal with Manafort was pardon-proof. Since that time, Mueller has been busy finishing up the Roger Stone indictment. Trump has finally finished his open book test, that is, submission of written answers to Mueller's questions, and any owners of the property Manafort had to forfeit under the plea deal have had their 30-day window to challenge the forfeiture. Only the bank owning the loan on his Trump Tower condo is known to have contested the forfeiture, which means the government may already be irretrievably seizing $43 million of Manafort's property. Which brings us to the status report that Mueller's team delayed long enough to get that open book test. Paulie Manafort can't help himself. According to Mueller's team, he has kept lying and lying since entering the cooperation agreement. After signing the plea agreement, Manafort committed, and I guess here we're looking at, what's the link to here? The status report. So quoting directly from it. After signing the plea agreement, Manafort committed federal crimes by lying to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Special Counsel's Office on a variety of subject matters which constitute breaches of the agreement. The government will file a detailed sentencing submission to the probation department and the court in advance of sentencing that sets forth the nature of the defendant's crimes and lies, including those after signing the plea agreement herein. As the defendant has breached the plea agreement, there is no reason to delay his sentencing herein. Marcy continues, as I noted back in September, the standard the government has to prove to claim Manafort has breached his agreement is just good faith, as compared to preponderance of the evidence with Rick Gates. And here from back in September, she says, with Gates, the standard the government has to prove to argue that he has breached his agreement is preponderance of the evidence, or, in case of committing a crime, probable cause. With Manafort, the government only has to prove good faith, or I guess that the lack of good faith, in order to say that the agreement is off. Now, it is true that Trump can pardon Manafort, though that probably won't happen right away. That's the only sane explanation for Manafort doing what he did, that he's still certain he'll be pardoned. but many of these charges can still be charged in state court. Just about the only explanation for Manafort's actions are that, as I suggested, Trump was happy to have Manafort serve as a mole in Mueller's investigation. That's some theory there. But Mueller's team appears to have no doubt that Manafort was lying to them. That means they didn't really need his testimony at all. It also means that they had no need to keep secrets. They could keep giving Manafort the impression that he was pulling a fast one over the prosecutors, all while reporting misleading information to Trump that he could use to fill out his open book test, which increases the likelihood that Trump just submitted sworn answers to those questions full of lies. What is happening here? The theory is that Mueller essentially knew the answers to the questions he was asking Manafort, but also in the course of his questioning of Manafort may have perhaps been feeding Manafort misinformation in an effort to find out whether that probably distinctively tagged misinformation that he had generated and would not have come from any other source. And in presenting that to Manafort, was checking to see whether that same misinformation showed up in Trump's written response to Mueller's questions. In other words, if he now goes to read Trump's answers to the written answers to the questions and finds in there traces of information that couldn't have come from anywhere because it isn't real, but that was generated by Mueller to test whether Manafort was leaking to Trump, that would create a very serious situation all by itself. And, of course, would close the books on the obstruction of justice question. So is that going on? It's just supposed. But it could be. That is pretty wild. So, if that were the case, that detailed sentencing submission setting forth the nature of the defendant's crimes and lies that Mueller mentions in the report, there's your Mueller report, says Marcy, which will be provided in a form that Matt Whitaker won't be able to suppress. Reminder, Mueller included 38 pages of evidence along with Manafort's plea agreement, which I argued showed how what Manafort and Trump did to Hillary was the same thing that Manafort had done to Yulia Tymoshenko, running the same play. That's why his work in Ukraine is so important and of interest to Mueller. So there you have it. That's a theory that's out there. Now we wait, I guess, with bated breath to find out what does Mueller think of the responses that Trump has submitted, and two, what goes in the sentencing report that they file on Manafort now. And I guess we'll get to see that sometime soon. Meanwhile, so many other things happening here that we didn't get to half of what we could have been discussing today, but we are drawing to the end of the show for today. Time to hand things over to Justice for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and in just a minute or so we'll get around to discussing what he'll be covering for the day. Let's see. Any other things that we need to shoehorn in here or drop hints about either for tomorrow or the rest of the week? Well, lots of things to check in on. I guess just like we did yesterday at the end of the show, though, I'll continue to wonder and keep count. I think we're on day 6 here. Tomorrow will mark a week since we were told that the Trump administration had concocted some sort of document allegedly signed by John Kelly and not the president that alleged itself to extend the authorization for the use of lethal force to members of the military stationed along the border in this, what's now become a fake and drummed up crisis at the border. I still haven't seen the thing, though I keep asking for it. And if you've seen it, maybe you want to share it with me. I'd be very interested. I haven't even seen this thing published anywhere, including on the White House website. So I'm a little concerned, although some people have been asking questions, why does that even matter? He's doing what he wants to do on the border. He's launching tear gas across the border. What do we need to know about whether or not the order is valid or not? Well, eventually this will come back to bite somebody. If this order doesn't exist, and even if it does, members of the military may be finding themselves before a court-martial, and they will almost certainly be claiming that they were authorized to do what they did by the president. It will be doubly embarrassing if, A, the order is illegal in the first place, and B, never even existed. Amazing. Anyway, it's a possibility. Time now, like I said, to hand things over to Justice for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And once again, I ate up all the time that was supposed to be about what's coming up on the show. Dang.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, well, he'll be revisiting the very important story of Trump's effort to prosecute Hillary Clinton and James Comey. We all know what that means for our country. And a very interesting story that we didn't get to touch yet. This is a great one. 5 women who were bridesmaids in each other's weddings all ran for the Colorado State Senate and flipped the chamber to Democrats. They'll all be there together. That should be interesting.